I'm not yelling today. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm up making my little cube things, but I want to talk about forgiveness since it's on my mind. I want to talk about forgiveness and forgiving yourself. I think people struggle more with forgiving themselves than they do forgiving other people. And I'm going to tell you why I think that is the case and how people get stuck. I think that when the ways that we've been taught to forgive other people is a very cliche, right? So if somebody does something to you, or you fall onto a circumstance where there's a fallout, you'll talk to a person and they'll say, oh, well, just forgive him and move forward. It's like the cliche line of the century, right? But if you're so caught up in the audacity of the other person, what they've done or whatever, you're focusing more on the shock of what happened. And what happens is, like, say they own 80% of the reason why the fallout happened. 20% of you subconsciously is holding some sort of shame, and that's why you can't forgive yourself. And how that happens is when you focus so much on the actual fallout, you're not focusing on the fact that you ignored all the signs. You're not focusing on the fact that you had like a nudge and a reason to start asking questions to make sure that the circumstance would not affect you later in a negative way, at least, or you try to build some clarity. And you ignored all of it. And instead of just, because you know, sometimes when you ask people questions, people get offended by questions. You don't want to offend them, so then you sit there and you let certain things rot out and then it blow up in your face. Well, your 20% is collecting that as a form of shame and unforgiveness and lack of trust for yourself, because you had all of the reasons to ask the questions and you did not. And then when everything blew up in your face, while you might be in your head real quick saying, oh my God, I remember when, oh my God, I remember what, oh, I should have asked it, you throw that to the side and then you focus on the blow up, which 80% the other person holds. And it's easier to focus there and to ask all of the why questions to them. And so then you start going in circles in your mind about, how can I forgive them? Well, really, and equally, you should be doing the same thing with yourself. Because in all fairness, you were a participant. Maybe not in the way of allowing the negative to, transpire, but in the way of you let the person in your space, or you let them become a part of your circumstance. So you kind of own a small part. And if you didn't feel like it was important to ask questions when you felt the nudges, that's where you start to blame yourself. You do it later. And if you ignore that, then it sits there inside of you. And I did another YouTube, or maybe just on Instagram video. I mentioned this before, that if you fall under certain circumstances and the turnout for you is negative, something in your subconscious you won't trust yourself. You won't trust yourself to make the right decisions moving forward, because part of you will start to worry, or something will come up. You'll feel this feeling come up where you'll be a little hesitant, resistant, because you're not trusting yourself. Your trust with yourself has been corrupted from whatever this last thing was, but you haven't acknowledged it as that, because you haven't forgiven yourself, because you haven't even looked at yourself. You're still focusing on the audacity of the other person and how things blew up. So if your focus is there and not on you, then how can you ever forgive you? You don't even know that that's sitting there. And while you think that a problem that happened all the way back there somewhere has left you, and you're just mad at the other person, because the other thing we do with this cliche form of forgiveness is you think that if you just let time pass, that equals forgiveness. No, it does not. It does not equal forgiveness. That means that over time, you've had space away from maybe the workplace, or over time, you've had space away from the person or a group of people, and you're not so edgy about the circumstance because you've had distance away from it. But mentally, you haven't addressed it. So when you meet in the space with the person, place, or thing, you might feel triggered. Well, it's only one reason why a trigger would sit there. It's because it hasn't been addressed. So, if it hasn't been addressed, then that is exactly where you need to start. Forgiving yourself allows you to forgive the other person easier. Because once you forgive yourself, what they did matters, but you being angry about it or holding it won't matter anymore. You can have an opinion about it, but to sit and walk with it every day unnecessarily, no, you don't do that. Some things take more time to forgive than others, but and I'm talking about people who like may do intentional things that you know what I'm talking about. So what I'm saying is, because my thing is to help people get unstuck, and I say this because of my own battles with that. So helping other people get unstuck is my thing. That's it. And even in the midst of trying to help other people get unstuck, they may screw you over sometimes. But the point is, when you learn how to forgive yourself and give yourself space to acknowledge, yes, I had a part in this. This is where I need to forgive myself. It makes it a little easier for you to transition into, trusting yourself again. And when it comes to you being responsible to make certain types of decisions, you won't feel apprehensive anymore. You won't feel held back. You won't necessarily have to stop and think about that circumstance. This is why certain things continue to come up with you, because you really haven't addressed it. When certain circumstances might present themselves that are kind of similar, you might go quiet. You might avoid the conversation because it just is hard for you to deal with, because technically you just haven't dealt with it. So that's how you forgive fully. It's tiring when I hear people say, oh, well, just forgive them. But how? How? Just do it? You can't just Nike that. You can't just, you need a system. You gotta learn how to address the issues. Addressing the issues and addressing the roots will help you get to the forgiveness part. And and this is, I'm saying this because a lot of times we seek closure for certain situations, and you can sometimes get it on your own. You can. It's better when the other party or parties participate in the closure, because it shows that they value whatever was sitting there in the first place. And that's part of the audacity part too, is when the other person ignores the whole situation. That becomes a part of the shock. It's like, so you did all that and then you're just going to act like it, all of that. So if you can get through that, that would be great if you could have all parties participating in that resolution. But if not, you have to spend more time learning how to forgive yourself for even extending the invitation or making the space or allowing people. Look, you know what I'm trying to say. It's 3 o'clock. I think I'm done making my blocks, and I don't feel like sitting here repeating myself. So you know what I'm going to say. Good night. I just want to talk about that real quick. No, seriously, go forgive yourself so you can make some boss-ass decisions, some boss-ass moves. Because it holds you up from stuff. If you start stuttering and feeling like you can't make decisions about certain things, it has a domino effect across everything. And you grown. You got to get out of here and go and make the right decisions. So go make the right decisions. But you got to forgive yourself first.